How do we honor dishonorable fathers and mothers? How many of you, this is your objection, you've already been there, right? As soon as I said honor, you immediately pulled the emergency brake in your soul. You're like, I'm not going that direction. And immediately what happens is that the hurt overtakes the honor. Your first thought is, you don't know my mom, you don't know my dad, you don't know what they said, you don't know what they did, you don't know what they failed to do, you don't know what they still do. They're dead, you don't understand, and all of a sudden the hurt wells up. Am I saying you shouldn't be hurt? I'm not saying that at all. Maybe what they have done or failed to do, it hurts the heart of God, the Father heart of God. I'm not saying you shouldn't be hurt, but the Bible doesn't have exception clauses for dishonorable parents. So how do we honor dishonorable parents? Again, don't raise your hand, but how many of you, this is your situation? Like, well, my parents are dishonorable. How do I honor them? It's like cheering for a criminal, right? There's something in the soul that feels wrong about that. Let me give you some ways. Give grace. First of all, some of you are too idealistic. Your expectations are unreasonable. Even if Jesus was your father, you'd still say, well, I didn't like his beard. I mean, you'd find something, right? Like, some of you, you've created expectations on your parents that are simply unreasonable. The Bible says that it's a glory to overlook an offense. Right? Some of you need to just realize, I am expecting far more of them than I ever expect of myself. And sometimes you got to give a little grace and say, you know what? When your parents are fallen sinners, it's not always going to be awesome. Give forgiveness. This is to guard your heart from bitterness. If you don't forgive your parents, you will become like your parents. Let me explain to you how. So there's a root of sin in their life. They sin against you. It's like you're infected now. Forgiveness is how you are cleansed from that root of bitterness, from that infection. If you don't forgive, then the sin that lived in them now lives in you, and it's transmuted through the bitterness. You ever see somebody that hates their parent and then grows up to become just like them? It's because they never forgave them. My daughter Ashley's 16. She's got her permit, learning how to drive. So pray for us all. It's one of those seasons. She's doing pretty good, but that's why my beard is gray. Nonetheless, one of the first things I had to teach her was, if there was something she was afraid she was going to hit, guess what she fixated on? That which she was trying to avoid. Any of you learned this the hard way? You're like, I don't want to cross the yellow line. Oh my gosh, I'm over the yellow line. I don't want to hit the mailbox. How come it's going toward the mailbox? Why is it? Because wherever you're looking, that's where you're going. And if you're always looking at your mother, you're always looking at your father, you're always looking at your past, you're always looking at your hurt, you're always looking at your suffering, you're always looking at their sin, that's where your life course is going to veer. Do you understand what I'm talking about? And forgiveness is saying, you know what? What you did was wrong. Either justice came at the cross where Jesus died for it, or justice will come at the end when you stand before Jesus and give an account for it. But, between you and me, I'm going to forgive. I'm going to leave it to Jesus so I can move on with my life and stop looking at you. Not that you ignore them or you hate them or you despise them, but they don't become the guiding, controlling center of your life, right? The bitterness or the hurt from your mother or father, it's not something that's, out in front of your proverbial vehicle and that which you're constantly veering toward. I can tell you a devastating story that comes to mind. I knew a guy, his father was an overbearing, legalistic, religious guy, push the mother down like she was not just one of the children, but the worst child of all, and berated her like she was just a hated, despised child. And this man was impossible to live with. A religious blockhead. It got to the point where his very sweet wife, I would say to the point of enabling and codependent, when they got older and the kids were raised, she didn't divorce him, but she moved out because she just couldn't even be around the guy. Well, his son grew up hating him, despising him, obsessing over him, but bitter against him and unforgiving. That son grew up to be just like his father. And if you told him you're like your father, he would be on the verge of violence. It was the greatest offense. Lo and behold, his wife moved out. And he lives alone, just like his father. Just like his father. If he would have forgiven his father and handed it to Jesus, he could have moved on with his life.